The alien general stood at the pinnacle of her career, a figure revered and feared across her war-driven civilization. Her species valued strength and strategy above all, and she had both in abundance. Her rise to power had been meteoric, marked by victories in battles that seemed unwinnable. Her leadership style was calculated but ruthless, driven by a singular belief in the superiority of her kind. She believed in the cause, in the unrelenting expansion of her people, and in the honor that came with serving their collective ambition. Her position as general was not just a role, it was her identity. Yet, power bred envy, and envy bred betrayal. Among those she commanded were individuals whose ambitions rivaled her own, hidden beneath a veneer of loyalty. Her closest advisors, those she had trusted with the most sensitive strategies, began to conspire against her. They viewed her growing influence as a threat, her unyielding commitment to the cause as a rigidity they could exploit. In secret, they plotted her downfall, their schemes culminating in a plan as devastating as it was cunning. The betrayal came during what should have been her crowning achievement, leading her fleet to secure a contested region of space rich in resources. As the operation reached its critical phase, she issued commands that were deliberately delayed or altered by her subordinates. The result was catastrophic. The fleet was thrown into disarray, and what had been a coordinated strike dissolved into chaos. The general, known for her precision, suddenly found herself outmaneuvered by an enemy she had underestimated due to false intelligence fed to her by her own advisors. Amid the chaos, a carefully timed mutiny unfolded. Her flagship, once a symbol of her authority, became a trap. The advisors turned on her, their loyalty revealed as a facade. She fought valiantly, her combat skills honed over decades, but the betrayal had been calculated to the last detail. Her remaining loyalists were outnumbered and outmatched. Her strength, while formidable, was not enough to overcome the treachery that had surrounded her. Cornered and faced with annihilation, she was forced into a desperate retreat. Her escape pod hurtled through the void, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the command she once wielded. Stripped of her fleet, her allies, and her purpose, she plummeted toward the surface of an uncharted planet. The impact was violent, the pod crumpling under the strain, leaving her battered but alive. For the first time in her life, she was alone. The weight of betrayal pressed on her more heavily than the planet's gravity. Her kind had cast her aside, the ideals she had devoted herself to shattered by those she had trusted most. The planet was harsh, a barren wasteland marked by jagged cliffs and turbulent weather. Its surface was scorched during the day and frozen at night, a brutal cycle that mirrored her internal turmoil. She scavenged what little remained of her supplies, her survival instincts taking over as she began to navigate the hostile environment. Her military training kept her alive, but the psychological toll was harder to combat. The betrayal replayed in her mind with merciless clarity. Every decision she had made, every alliance she had forged, now felt like a mistake. In the solitude of the planet, she found herself questioning everything she had once believed. Her species' ideals, which had once seemed so absolute, now felt hollow. The honor she had fought for, the loyalty she had demanded, had been nothing more than tools for manipulation. The realization was a wound deeper than any she had sustained in battle. Yet, beneath the despair, there was a flicker of something else, anger. Not just at those who had betrayed her but at herself for having placed such blind faith in a system that had failed her so completely. She forced herself to focus on survival, channeling her anger into action. The planet offered little in the way of sustenance, but she adapted, hunting the few creatures hardy enough to endure its conditions. Each victory, no matter how small, was a reminder of her strength. The general was no stranger to hardship, and she refused to let her betrayers dictate her fate. If her kind had deemed her expendable, she would prove them wrong. Survival became her rebellion, a defiant act against those who had sought to erase her. The isolation, however, was a constant companion. It gave her too much time to think, to replay the events that had led her here. She tried to rationalize the betrayal, to find some semblance of logic in what had happened, but the answers eluded her. Her advisors had gained nothing by casting her out except chaos within their own ranks. Their actions were not born of strategy but of fear of her power, her influence, her potential to overshadow them. As days turned into weeks, the general began to adapt to her new reality. She constructed a rudimentary shelter from the wreckage of her escape pod, creating a base from which to explore the planet. The process was painstaking, her once advanced tools now reduced to primitive implements by the planet's corrosive environment. Yet, in these small acts of creation, she found a semblance of purpose. The general, stripped of her command, was rediscovering the value of self-reliance. Despite her resilience, the planet's hostility took its toll. Supplies dwindled, and the physical strain of survival began to wear on her. Her once imposing frame, built for combat and leadership, bore the marks of her struggle. The scars on her skin were joined by new ones, etched by the planet's unforgiving landscape. Yet, even as her body weakened, her resolve hardened. She was determined to endure, not out of hope for rescue but out of sheer defiance. The betrayal had taken everything from her, her rank, her people, her purpose. But it had not taken her will to survive. On this desolate planet, the general began to redefine herself, not as a leader of armies or a servant of her species, but as an individual. Stripped of the expectations and constraints of her former life, she was free to question the ideals that had once defined her. It was a painful process, but one that she embraced with the same determination that had made her a formidable leader. Her isolation was both her greatest challenge and her greatest teacher. In the silence of the planet, she began to see the flaws in the system she had once upheld. Her species' obsession with power and expansion had blinded them to the cost of their actions. Loyalty, honor, strength, these were not absolutes but choices, shaped by context and circumstance. For the first time, the general allowed herself to imagine a different way of being, one not defined by the expectations of her kind. The planet had taken much from her, but it had also given her something she had never had before: perspective. And while she had no illusions about the difficulty of her situation, she knew one thing for certain: her story was not over. The betrayal that had cast her here was not the end but a new beginning, a chance to forge a path that was truly her own. The human had been marooned on the planet for what felt like an eternity. A skilled engineer from a distant Earth-based exploratory program, he had survived the crash of his survey ship through a combination of resourcefulness and sheer determination. The mission had been a routine geological survey of a potential mining site, but the planet's volatile atmosphere had turned the expedition into a disaster. Alone, cut off from all communication, and with no immediate hope of rescue, he had learned to adapt. The hostile environment pushed his survival skills to their limits, but his ability to innovate kept him alive. Every day was a battle against the planet's harsh conditions. The atmosphere was toxic, forcing him to rely on a makeshift filtration system cobbled together from parts of his wrecked ship. Food and water were scarce, requiring careful rationing and ingenuity to supplement his supplies. He moved frequently, scavenging what he could from the ship's debris, staying one step ahead of the planet's dangerous wildlife and unpredictable weather. The solitude was oppressive, but he found solace in his work. Repairing, creating, and improving his survival tools became his way of coping, a routine that gave structure to the chaos around him. His first awareness of another presence on the planet came from a faint signal detected by a device he had rigged together. The signal was irregular, clearly not from his ship's systems. It piqued his curiosity and raised his hope, something he had carefully guarded against in the face of endless setbacks. With caution tempered by desperation, he began to trace the signal, following its intermittent bursts across the barren terrain. The journey was grueling, each step a calculated risk as he balanced the need to conserve resources with the potential of finding something, or someone, that could change his situation. When he finally discovered the source of the signal, it was not what he had expected. The sight of the alien, imposing and battle-scarred, struck him with equal parts awe and fear. This was no ordinary survivor. This was a being whose presence commanded attention, even in such dire circumstances. The human's first instinct was to retreat, but the rational part of his mind recognized the potential opportunity. Survival was difficult enough alone, but with another, even one so vastly different, there could be a chance to share resources, knowledge, and strength. Their initial meeting was marked by tension. The alien's posture radiated suspicion, its stance defensive yet calculated. The human mirrored this unease, keeping his movements deliberate and unthreatening. The language barrier was immediate and absolute. Their attempts at verbal communication resulted in nothing but frustration. Yet neither made a move to leave. There was a shared understanding, unspoken but undeniable, that neither could afford to dismiss the other's presence. The human reached out cautiously, offering a small piece of food as a gesture of goodwill. The alien hesitated, studying him with a sharp, calculating gaze before accepting. Over the next few days, they established a tentative routine, navigating their mistrust with small acts of cooperation. The human showed the alien his filtration system, demonstrating how it worked and how it could be repaired or improved. The alien, in turn, revealed a cache of supplies salvaged from its escape pod, offering resources the human had struggled to obtain. These exchanges were slow and cautious, each testing the other's intentions, but they formed the foundation of a fragile alliance. The human quickly recognized the alien's remarkable abilities. Its strength and combat skills far exceeded anything he had encountered, allowing it to fend off predators with ease. But he also noticed its injuries, remnants of a battle that had clearly taken its toll. The alien's movements, though precise, were slower than they should have been, and it often paused to recover its strength. Without understanding its words, he could sense its frustration, its struggle against vulnerabilities it was unaccustomed to facing. The human, relying on his training and natural resourcefulness, began to help in small ways, offering improvised bandages, creating tools to assist with its recovery. The alien, though initially wary, began to reciprocate. It used its advanced understanding of technology to assist the human in reinforcing his shelter and repairing his equipment. Its knowledge of energy systems and materials far surpassed his own, and he watched in fascination as it manipulated components with an efficiency born of years of experience. Their communication remained limited to gestures and demonstrations, but their actions spoke louder than words. Each contribution strengthened their partnership, building a trust that neither could have anticipated. As their cooperation deepened, they faced the planet's challenges together. A violent storm that might have overwhelmed either of them alone became a manageable obstacle with their combined efforts. The human's ingenuity and adaptability complemented the alien's resilience and strategic thinking. When the storm damaged their shelter, they worked side by side to rebuild it, improvising with materials scavenged from the debris. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced their reliance on one another. Despite the progress they made, the differences between them remained a constant undercurrent. The human couldn't help but marvel at the alien's otherworldly presence, its technology, and demeanor a reminder of how vast and diverse the universe truly was. At the same time, the aliens seemed equally intrigued by the human's determination and resourcefulness. There were moments of quiet observation, where they studied each other with a mix of curiosity and respect. Though they couldn't speak, their actions and expressions conveyed a growing understanding. The turning point in their alliance came when the human devised a plan to amplify the alien's signal. He had noticed the faint pulses emanating from its equipment, and realized that with a few adjustments, they might be able to increase its range. The alien was initially skeptical, its movements tense as it watched him work, but as he explained his intentions through crude drawings and gestures, it began to assist. Together, they dismantled and reconfigured the device, combining its advanced components with his improvised tools. The process was painstaking, requiring precise coordination and trust, but the result was a signal stronger than either had hoped for. Their success was a shared triumph, a moment that solidified their partnership. The human saw a flicker of something in the alien's expression, approval, perhaps even gratitude. For the first time since their encounter, he felt a sense of connection, a recognition that they were no longer just two survivors but a team. The alien's actions carried a similar acknowledgement. It moved with a purpose that suggested it now saw him not as an obstacle or a liability, but as an equal. Their alliance was far from perfect, but it was enough. Together, they had overcome the initial barriers of mistrust and communication, forging a bond that neither could have anticipated. In a world that sought to crush them, they had found strength in each other, a partnership born not of choice but of necessity, and perhaps, in time, something more profound. The partnership between the alien and the human deepened as their shared challenges became more demanding. The harsh conditions of the planet pushed them to their physical and mental limits, and their survival increasingly relied on a delicate balance of their unique skills. Each day presented new obstacles, but their growing synchronization transformed these threats into opportunities for collaboration. They had evolved from reluctant allies into a cohesive unit, each anticipating the other's strengths and weaknesses with precision. The humans' resourcefulness proved critical in solving logistical problems that neither of them could manage alone. When food supplies ran dangerously low, he devised traps and foraging strategies adapted to the planet's ecosystem. The alien, with its heightened senses and combat expertise, scouted for larger prey and protected their base from roaming predators. Their combined efforts yielded results that neither could have achieved in isolation, a testament to their growing reliance on one another. During one particularly grueling search for water, they encountered environmental hazards that tested their trust. A sudden tectonic shift opened a series of fissures in the ground, cutting off their planned route. The humans' quick thinking led to the construction of a temporary bridge from salvaged materials, while the aliens' strength ensured its stability under the planet's increased gravity. Their efforts were seamless, each action flowing into the next with an unspoken understanding. When they finally reached their goal, the relief was shared but unspoken, a nod of acknowledgement serving as the only communication they needed. The aliens' injuries, though healing, remained a vulnerability that the human worked to mitigate. He adapted parts of his equipment to create a supportive brace for the alien's weakened limb, a design that allowed it to move more freely without risking further damage. The alien initially hesitated to accept the modification, its pride evident in its stance, but practicality won out. Once it realized the benefits, its approval was clear in the way it carried itself, more assured, less burdened by the limitations of its injury. In quieter moments, they began to share fragments of their past through gestures and actions rather than words. The human drew crude images in the dirt, depicting Earth's landscapes and its vast oceans. The alien watched intently, its gaze lingering on each line as if committing the imagery to memory. It responded by arranging stones and symbols in a pattern that conveyed a sense of its own home, towering structures, sprawling vistas, and a star-filled sky. Though the specifics were lost between them, the exchange fostered a deeper connection, a mutual understanding of the lives they had left behind. The human's curiosity about the alien grew with each interaction. Its demeanor, while stoic, carried an undercurrent of purpose that hinted at a story far more complex than he could comprehend. He noticed how it would pause during moments of relative safety to carve intricate patterns into the ground or repair its armor with a precision that suggested ritualistic importance. These small acts spoke of a culture deeply rooted in tradition and discipline, one that contrasted sharply with the improvisational nature of his own survival strategies. Despite their differences, he felt a growing respect for the alien's resilience and dedication. The alien, too, seemed to observe him with increasing interest. It studied his tools and methods, occasionally imitating his actions with an almost childlike curiosity. When he demonstrated the mechanics of a rudimentary filtration system, it followed along, offering suggestions through gestures that improved the design's efficiency. These moments of collaboration highlighted the ways their respective strengths complemented each other, their combined knowledge surpassing what either could achieve alone. A defining moment in their partnership came when they encountered an unexpected threat, a pack of predatory creatures adapted to the planet's harsh environment. The attack was swift and coordinated, forcing the alien and the human to rely on each other entirely. The alien's combat expertise came to the forefront as it fended off the initial wave, its movements precise and lethal despite its lingering injuries. The human, meanwhile, used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and creating diversions that disrupted the predator's advance. The battle was intense, every second a test of their ability to work together under extreme pressure. At one point, the human found himself cornered, his improvised weapon failing to deter an advancing predator. The alien intervened without hesitation, placing itself between him and the threat. Its actions were not just those of a warrior but of a protector, a role that transcended their initial dynamic of mutual necessity. When the predators finally retreated, both stood side by side, battered but victorious, their bond forged even stronger by the ordeal. In the aftermath, they took stock of their situation. Supplies were dwindling faster than they could replenish them, and the planet's conditions showed no signs of improving. The human began to draft plans for a more sustainable approach to their survival, integrating the aliens' input into every decision. Together, they constructed a more permanent shelter, incorporating elements of both their technologies to withstand the planet's extreme weather. The process was painstaking, requiring countless adjustments and compromises, but the result was a structure that symbolized their shared resilience. Their partnership had grown into something more profound than either could have anticipated. It was no longer just about survival. It was about finding purpose in their shared struggle. The alien, once a figure of solitude and pride, began to exhibit subtle signs of trust and even camaraderie. The human, who had long since accepted his role as a lone survivor, found a sense of belonging he hadn't realized he was missing. Together, they had created a fragile but enduring sense of hope, one that fueled their determination to endure, no matter what the planet threw at them. The beacon's activation represented the culmination of their shared efforts, a testament to their combined ingenuity and determination. The aliens' advanced understanding of technology, paired with the humans' ability to adapt and innovate, had resulted in a signal strong enough to breach the planet's turbulent atmosphere. It was not perfect, intermittent bursts rather than a steady stream, but it was enough to offer a glimmer of hope. The realization that rescue was possible reignited their resolve, even as the planet's hostility continued to press against them. As they awaited a response, their focus shifted to reinforcing their position. The beacon's signal, while faint, had the potential to attract unwanted attention, both from the planet's wildlife and any hostile forces that might be scanning for signs of life. They worked tirelessly, fortifying their shelter and creating defensive measures. The human devised traps and alarm systems from salvaged materials, while the alien used its strength and combat training to construct barriers and weapons. Their actions were coordinated, every movement deliberate, as they prepared for any challenge that might arise. The wait tested their patience and resolve. Days stretched into nights, and the uncertainty began to weigh on them. Yet, in their interactions, there was a shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement that they were no longer just two individuals struggling for survival. Their bond had deepened, forged through hardship and mutual reliance. The human, who had once viewed the alien with cautious curiosity, now saw it as a true partner. Similarly, the alien's guarded demeanor had softened, its actions reflecting a growing sense of trust and camaraderie. Their partnership was put to the ultimate test when an unfamiliar ship entered the planet's atmosphere. At first, the sight of the vessel filled them with hope, but that hope quickly gave way to alarm as the ship's intentions became clear. It was not a rescue mission. The vessel, heavily armed and bearing markings unfamiliar to either of them, began scanning the surface, its weapons systems active. Whether it was a scavenger crew, a hostile faction, or something else entirely, one thing was clear: they were not here to help. The alien and human quickly devised a plan. Their knowledge of the planet's terrain and their own makeshift defenses became their greatest assets. The alien took charge of the tactical aspects, identifying strategic positions and weak points in the enemy's approach. The human adapted their tools and traps to serve as distractions and improvised weapons. Together, they turned their small shelter into a fortress, a last line of defense against an overwhelming threat. When the confrontation came, it was swift and brutal. The hostile crew deployed drones and foot soldiers, their advanced weaponry a stark contrast to the crude tools and defenses of the stranded pair. But the aliens' combat skills and the humans' ingenuity proved to be an unexpected equalizer. The alien moved with precision and purpose, neutralizing threats with calculated strikes. The humans' traps and distractions disrupted the enemy's formations, creating openings that the alien exploited with ruthless efficiency. The battle was not without cost. Both sustained injuries, their exhaustion compounded by the relentless assault. Yet they refused to yield. Their determination was not just about survival. It was about defying the odds, proving that their bond and resilience could overcome even the most insurmountable challenges. When the final enemy fell and the ship retreated, it was not victory they felt but relief. They had endured, and in doing so, they had proven the strength of their partnership. In the quiet aftermath, they turned their attention back to the beacon. The human made adjustments to stabilize the signal, while the alien used its remaining energy to reinforce their defenses. Their injuries, though painful, were treated with the same efficiency they had applied to every other challenge. They worked in silence, their actions reflecting an unspoken agreement that their survival was a shared achievement. Hours later, another ship appeared in the sky. This one bore the markings of an allied faction, its approach cautious but unmistakably friendly. The human and alien exchanged a glance, their expressions unreadable but heavy with emotion. As the ship landed and the rescuers disembarked, there was no grand celebration, only a quiet sense of closure. They had survived together, and that was enough. As they boarded the rescue vessel, the human paused, turning to look at the alien. In that moment, words were unnecessary. Their journey, marked by betrayal, hardship, and unexpected connection, had created a bond that transcended their differences. The alien nodded, its expression one of quiet acknowledgement. They had begun as strangers, each defined by their own struggles, but they had emerged as partners, united by their shared resilience. The journey away from the planet was somber, marked by reflection rather than celebration. The human thought of the life he had left behind, while the alien considered the path that lay ahead. Both understood that their experiences on the planet had changed them in ways they could not yet fully grasp. For the human, it was a lesson in the power of adaptability and the value of trust. For the alien, it was a realization that purpose could be found not in loyalty to a flawed system but in the connections forged through adversity. As they parted ways, their acknowledgement of each other was simple but profound. The human offered a small token, a piece of equipment they had crafted together, as a reminder of their shared journey. The alien accepted it with a quiet nod, placing it alongside the remnants of its shattered past. Their paths might diverge, but the bond they had forged would endure, a testament to what could be achieved when trust and determination triumphed over fear and division. The rescue ship carried them away from the desolate planet, but the memory of their shared struggle remained vivid. For both the human and the alien, it was not just a story of survival but a testament to the resilience of the spirit and the strength of an unexpected alliance. Their journey had begun with betrayal and isolation, but it had ended with a bond that would shape the future paths of both their lives.